So I just saw Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and it was a movie. I did enjoy it overall, but I have my gripes with it. Now looking back at the recent movies, I did enjoy them for the most part. I thought the first one was a good update to the original film, and it was good focusing more on the apes' perspectives rather than the humans. And I thought Caesar was a pretty good character to follow. That, and I think the visual effects still hold up to this day. And I think that opinion matches with the second film. Though to be honest, if I watch it again, my opinion may have changed over the years. But at least I did enjoy them, which I can't say for the third one. I honestly hate this movie with the passion of 1,000 suns. The plot felt more generic and lame, especially with a revenge type of scenario. That and the title is a fucking lie. The ending's not even about a war for the Planet of the Apes. It felt more like a prison escape of the Planet of the Apes, which wouldn't be as big of an issue if the writing was good. The problem is that it ain't. A lot of the plot involves in luck, contrivance, convenience, and stupidity. And sure, you could say it's not a big deal of every single movie, which fair, but given the fact that the movies are known for their writing and how good the story is, it's a huge letdown when the story actually kinda sucks. It was a huge letdown how this story ended, especially with Caesar's entire story. And I don't understand why a lot of people like this one. There are some other videos that explain it more than me, but all I could say is that it was garbage, and I hate it. I made a funny meme though.
Oh no! Oh no! No, no!
But I'm happy to report that this movie is a huge improvement from the last one. It felt like a good step in the right direction where the series is going, but it also kind of felt like a step backwards, if that makes any sense. The one thing I'm glad this movie actually did in the last ones is that the apes finally start fucking talking instead of goddamn sign language. Now to clarify, I don't mind the apes using sign language. It worked for the original film because it was an evolution of them eventually talking. The sign language was used as a metaphor of the apes evolving into intelligence. And what does civilized species use mostly? Language. So when you see scenes like this, it shows that the apes are slowly evolving. That and they use sign language that makes sense for the scene. It makes sense for both Caesar and Maurice to understand each other since they both use sign language. By the time we went into the second and third film, it kind of became more pointless. There really is no use for sign language anyway, and it turns out there are other apes that don't use sign language at all. There are even some scenes where the apes are just simply talking to each other while also using sign language, and I thought to myself, so why are they even using sign language at the first place? They're not even showing anything useful with it at all. And while they do use sign language in this film, thankfully it's used sparingly, and they use sign language to their advantage, like having secret conversations and using that to make plans. And I thought that was actually really clever, though I kind of wish they did this more often instead of using it randomly, because there were some scenes that they actually talked anyway instead of using the sign language. But at least they used this type of element that made it more useful. Now the thing that got me intrigued to this film compared to the other ones is how the apes are now the dominant species, and the entirety of human civilization is all abandoned and overgrown, which I'm kind of a sucker for that. I always like abandoned cities filled with nature, animals walking through the ruins of abandoned cities, and to see what life would be like in our absence. And it's kind of strangely beautiful actually. There's a lot of sunshine here and there. Nature has turned everything into something beautiful and exotic, and it always looks kind of awe-inspiring. Now compared to other media that shows this, it's always kind of dark and cloudy, maybe sometimes foggy, having a fear that these things will fall one day. It always kind of looks kind of drag. Compared to this, it's actually kind of the opposite, and it kind of makes you want to explore this place more. The thing that I found the most interesting was to see how the apes culture has evolved. And we see that our main characters live in a village that raises eagles and uses that for the base for their customs. And it was kind of cool how far these apes have come. But the biggest thing is that Caesar's now a Jesus-type figure, and they all make a religion around him and worship him. But they all don't follow him in the same way. We see an entire faction of apes that do worship Caesar, but they see him as a conqueror and wants to take over the world, which is one of the main villain's motivations. And he uses that to his advantage to bring power to the entire ape populace. However, there's another ape, an orangutan, who sees a more zen and peaceful look on Caesar. And it actually makes sense, since according to the film, it's been 1,000 years, their view on Caesar is going to be a bit more different and distorted. Even the orangutan god isn't perfect. In fact, he thinks that the entire ruins were made by apes instead of humans, which is actually kind of funny. It just shows you how different interpretations can be a vastly different story than how they were in the past, just like in real life. It's not only a fascinating idea, but it was actually done rather well and kind of clever actually. But as much as I like to praise this, unfortunately it's not the entire focus of the movie. So it turns out the main girl actually would speak normal all along, and she was pretending to be stupid the entire time. After the orangutan dies, because
in water, chimps will drown.
And it's revealed that the villain has a normal guy who also speaks normal like her, and it turns out she's actually from a secret human organization trying to stop the apes. And the main villain's trying to unlock this entire door, which I thought was gonna be a nuclear bomb at first, but it's actually a secret military base filled with guns and tanks. And it's the same old conflict of humans versus apes that we've seen 3 times in a row. Now, I'm not saying it can't go there. I'm fine with repetition. But after seeing this whole new direction this movie was trying to go for, only to come back to the same conflict we've seen again, I was kind of disappointed by that. In fact, the entire movie didn't really need humans at all, especially ones that can talk. It would have been more interesting if it was the apes fighting each other, arguing over whose vision of Caesar is the correct one. But nah, it's the same old human versus apes conflict we see 3 times now, so I guess that's going to be the new direction. One problem I have is that people kind of underestimate how things last, especially for 1,000 years. During the end of the film, they actually start out these satellite dishes, but they're so worn down that it might not ever work again. But it actually does work, and it's actually very clear. Now, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure those things would not be able to work that well, let alone having a clear signal. That and the entire conflict for the apes trying to get these weapons will probably not work anyway. Yeah, I know that military bases last very long, but I do not think these things will function properly after 1,000 years / generations. It's a very stupid trope, and I kind of wish people are a bit more aware of this, which I understand it's not a big issue, but you would think they'll keep that in mind, given the fact it's trying to be more realistic. If I'm gonna talk about the characters, they were pretty serviceable. I thought the main ape was a pretty good protagonist. He's more intelligent and cunning than Caesar, and he actually uses that to his advantage. In fact, he beats the villain with a bunch of birds using the bird song, even though he's surrounded by a bunch of chimps that could easily overpower him. Which, keep in mind, the guy doesn't even have any weapons. But since this is PG-13, we cannot allow to do that. We have the girl chip that he's in love with, we have the funny chip who's a goofball, and then we have the evil gorilla. Which, no joke, by the end of the movie, when all the apes are about to drown, the gorilla comes and sees the main character. But instead of him trying to get help and try to survive, he instead fights the main character for no reason. It kind of reminded me of the end of Avatar 2, where the 2 characters just fight for no fucking reason, even though they could just retreat and regroup after their losses. Now, let's just fight each other because it's the final act of the movie. And although I like the main villain and it was actually pretty hilarious, I kind of wish it was in the movie a lot more and had more influence in the plot. But the best character had to be the orangutan. Not only is he a wise old monkey who follows the old ways of Caesar, but he's also pretty funny. But even his death had more impact than the last film, and it felt like a really genuine death than what they did last time, which felt very artificial. So overall, I think the movie was pretty enjoyable, and it was certainly a better experience than the third one, though I kind of wish they did a lot more with it and go a different direction. It's kind of fun that this and Godzilla x Kong both have monkeys as major plot points and still be highly praised. Unfortunately for this movie, it doesn't seem to be that successful. Yeah, here's a little update. It seems that it's doing well overseas at least. And it did catch up with its budget. So, yeah. Though when it comes to visual effects, I think he still got the money on that front. And what's interesting is that they're apparently making a version without visual effects whatsoever, which is not only kind of funny, but also kind of fascinating how these things actually work, which I think is progress. So yeah, check it out, and I'm giving this one 6 monkeys with guns out of 10.